Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive structural shift happening in the global workforce right now. We're going to explore how the rapid rise of an autonomous AI workforce is structurally forcing Chief Human Resources Officers, CHROs, to completely rethink and redesign entry-level apprenticeships and performance metrics. If you lead a team or just care about the future of talent, you absolutely need to understand this transition.
So let's kick things off with a really high-stakes question, one that every organizational design executive needs to answer immediately. If AI executes your entry-level work, who becomes tomorrow's senior leader? This isn't just a fun theoretical puzzle, it's a very real crisis of capability building that's unfolding right in front of us.
The urgency here is crystal clear when you look at the numbers. Globally, 37% of young workers are in roles with medium to high exposure to AI-driven task change. And it actually gets way more intense depending on where you are. That number jumps to a staggering 75% for young workers in Eastern Asia and 69% in Northern America.
To put that exposure into perspective, we're way past the era of AI just being a helpful little sidekick or a basic chatbot. We are entering a phase where nearly 60% of work is now theoretically automatable, thanks to wild advances in reasoning models and agentic skills, meaning AI that can literally make decisions and execute multi-step workflows entirely on its own. Machines are now autonomously executing complex cognitive and physical work.
Section 1. The symbiotic enterprise emerges.
To understand the sheer scale of this economic shift, you've got to look at what organizations are evolving into. Enter the symbiotic enterprise. In this new model, humans pivot to focus purely on strategic priorities, building trust and exercising judgment. Meanwhile, AI agents are autonomously executing complex cognitive workflows, and intelligent robots handle physical tasks that are beyond human constraints. The core unit of production isn't just an individual human anymore. It's this hybrid, human-machine team.
It's a total paradigm shift. Think about the traditional enterprise. It relied heavily on fixed functional silos, and labor was the dominant predictable cost. The symbiotic enterprise operates completely differently. It's a dynamic, flat network of outcome-oriented teams driven by a technology-intensive, usage-based cost structure. You aren't just layering AI on top of old workflows here. The AI actually becomes the core operating model itself.
And honestly, we're already seeing the fallout of this shift on early career opportunities. Recent labor market research, including a widely cited analysis by Brynjolfsson and his colleagues, points to a 16% decline in entry-level jobs within AI-exposed fields in the U.S. since late 2022. Companies are simply hiring less at the bottom because AI is doing all that foundational work.
Section 2. The broken apprenticeship model. This brings us straight to the core vulnerability organizations are facing right now: the collapse of the traditional talent pipeline. Here is the billion-dollar question. If junior staff aren't doing the foundational analytical work, the research, the first drafts, crunching the data, how do they ever acquire the domain expertise and critical judgment required to actually manage the business later on? Historically, entry-level work wasn't just about output. It was an apprenticeship.
The reality is, the apprenticeship crisis is completely real. That classic learning by doing model is severely weakening. When you push junior workers into complex work earlier and let AI handle the basics, they risk skipping absolutely critical learning steps. By just layering AI onto workflows for a quick, short-term productivity boost, organizations risk actively dismantling their future leadership pipeline.
And you know what? Leadership is already feeling this friction. Nearly a quarter of CEOs, 23% to be exact, already recognize that their current structural setup is actually constraining their performance in this new reality. They know for a fact that the old hierarchy just isn't built for a workforce where machines are doing the execution.
Section 3. The automation succession rule. This brings us to what literally needs to become the unbreakable law of modern HR, the automation succession rule. It's simple, but profound. You absolutely cannot automate a junior task unless the human role is intentionally redesigned to govern, validate, and orchestrate that exact AI output. You can't just delete the task and walk away. You have to evolve the human's role from execution to orchestration.
As one business leader pointed out in the research, if we don't take a more strategic view of jobs and workflows, we'll just end up automating in silos rather than redesigning how work actually creates value. You have to make deliberate trade-offs about what to automate and what you need to retain strictly for the sake of human development.
A brilliant real-world example of this, in action, is Hitachi. They are deliberately redesigning their early career roles. For instance, they make sure their entry-level engineers still develop fundamental coding skills before they're allowed to rely heavily on AI-generated code. Why? Explicitly, so these young engineers build the domain expertise necessary to accurately validate and challenge the AI's output. They're preserving the exact experiences that build business judgment.
Now you might be wondering, does all this redesigning actually pay off? Well, the data says yes, absolutely. Companies achieving the strongest AI-driven financial outcomes are twice as likely to fundamentally redesign their workflows rather than just handing out flashy new AI software tools to their existing workforce and hoping for the best.
Section 4. Flattening the corporate pyramid.
Because AI agents can now share context in real time and coordinate workflows completely autonomously, we're seeing some massive structural shifts. The traditional middle management layer, which, let's be honest, used to exist primarily to coordinate between functional silos, is being hollowed out. Managerial reach expands significantly, and career progression stops being a rigid upward ladder. Instead, it becomes a dynamic, nonlinear mosaic based on continuous skills development and project outcomes.
Section 5. Rewiring Performance and Metrics.
Now, if the structure of the company and the nature of the roles change, the way we measure success absolutely has to change with it. A great example of this is the global jobs platform Indeed. They are practically rewiring their entire performance architecture for the AI era. They realized you just can't assess an employee operating in a symbiotic enterprise using metrics designed for a traditional one.
They tackled this with a really clear three-step action plan. First, they're shifting away from rigid job titles to a skills-based architecture. Second, and this is huge, they're redefining performance expectations. Employees are no longer assessed just on their raw output, but on how effectively they direct and interrogate AI to accelerate delivery. And third, they're modernizing hiring to assess candidates on human skills like critical thinking and reasoning alongside their AI usage.
So, the big takeaway here for every CHRO and manager tuning in is that performance management has to pivot, like yesterday. You have to move away from the old metrics of measuring sheer human effort and individual output and embrace the new metrics, measuring a worker's leverage, judgment, and orchestration over AI systems. It's all about how much value you can drive through the AI, not just what you can physically type out yourself.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to take back to your executive board as you map out the future of your workforce. Are you just layering AI onto old jobs to save a few hours a week? Or are you fundamentally redesigning how your organization creates value and builds its future leaders? How you answer that is absolutely going to define your company's survival in this symbiotic era. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.